Hi, everybody. Welcome out to the Dice Tower. My name is Chris Yee.
And I'm Wendy Yee.
And I'm Mike DeLisio.
Today we're taking a look at Cascadero. This is a new game from Bitewing Games, who has done several Reiner Knizia reprints, and this one is actually a new, unique game from him, a designer that one of the three of us, I would say, worships at the altar of. Is that close to correct?
I think that's overstated. I have a great admiration for many of his games. There are many games he's made that I do not like at all, but that's going to happen when you're as prolific as he is.
Prolific is a good word.
Yeah. It's several hundred games by Reiner Knizia, and this is one of them. So with that fantastic introduction, we're going to show you how this game plays, and then we'll be back to give the review.
Okay, here we see a game of Cascadero, all set up for a two-player game. The setup of the board does not change at all, depending upon player count, so the only difference is we have two sets of player colors instead of up to four. One thing I wanted to mention really quickly is that this is a pre-production copy of the game, albeit a very nice one, but one change that specifically has already been made is that these trackers on the different tracks here in this version are a oval, a little disc, and they opted to go with cubes for the final production copy because these can be a bit fiddly to move around, especially in a four-player game where the stacks are higher. They determined that it would be much easier to have them be cubes. They could all fit in the same square without being stacked, and I can confirm that these can be a little bit fiddly to mess with, so I truly believe that the cubes are going to be the better version of that particular component. All right, let's move on to the game. So on your turn, it is very simple. You will place one of your envoys. That's it. Every turn, you're going to be placing one of these envoys, and it's going to be on this board. And you can place it anywhere you want with just a couple of restrictions. You're never going to be placing one of your envoys in one of these colored towns. The different colors represent different types of industries in this land. And the only other restriction is that you cannot place your envoy onto a spot where there already is an envoy. Outside of those two restrictions, you can go anywhere you want. So let's say, for example, that I went here. At this point, nothing is going to happen because no town scoring was triggered. What do I mean by town scoring? Well, let's say yellow had placed one of their envoys out here, and I come in and place a envoy right here. Now, what I have is a grouping, two or more of my envoys uninterrupted, and they have connected to a town. It's important to know that in this game, you're not going to be scoring the town that you are coming from, you're scoring the town that you are connecting to. So in this case, I would get 1 point in yellow. And what I would do is I would come over here to this yellow track, this is the blue player, I would move forward 1 on the yellow track. Some differences to that would be, let's say for example, that on a later turn, yellow had been going here, and they connect to this yellow town. Well, the idea here in this game is that you are gaining the trust of the people after the land had been divided, and the envoys of the Cascadero are trying to unite the land. And so they were mistrustful when the first envoy came by, but then as they got to know us better, the envoy came in, and now they trust them more. In this case, yellow would actually be scoring 2 because there's another envoy grouping right there. So yellow would then move up 2 on that track. All right. If you see along the left side of this board, or this area of tracks, there are certain boons that you're going to get as you pass over or land on. Okay. And so in this case, it's telling you that the first player to go there would get 2 points, and every other player that reached that spot would get 1 point if they came on a later turn. These seals we are going to talk about in a moment, but all of these have little things that are going to help you progress throughout the game, either by giving you points, by potentially giving you another turn to place out an envoy, perhaps move envoys, or get one of these seals. And I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. The way you can get potentially 3 points through your town scoring is if one of these heralds are involved, okay? These heralds are placed out on the board at the beginning, and these are kind of people that were sent out in advance by the Cascadero, and they've already established a little bit of a connection with the town. So let's say that on a later turn, yellow had actually gone here. They're going to get 2 points because the herald is there. Normally they would get 1. If blue later came to this area, they're actually going to get 3 of the blue scoring because the herald is there and the yellow grouping is there as well. That's the general conceit behind the game. You are placing out your envoys onto the board anywhere you like. You don't have to be connected. You can place them anywhere you want on the board other than those 2 restrictions I mentioned before. And you're going to be moving up these tracks, gaining the boons, the benefits, the points. Let's talk about these tracks just a bit more. You'll see that these tracks are tied to player colors. The other 2 player colors in the game are orange and pink. White is the education track, and it is the Cascadero's track. It's not tied to one of the players. One of the twists of this game is that if you do not max out your color track, so in this case the blue player, if they don't max them out their track, and if the yellow player doesn't max out their track, no matter how many points they've scored, they are ineligible to win the game. So you have to max out your own track to even be eligible to win the game. These seals I mentioned before, you'll see they're kind of in a indented or folded space of this ribbon. That denotes, and you'll see that here as well, that denotes that you cannot pass over this spot and get the seal. You have to land directly on it. So sometimes the timing of when you go to a certain place and when you score a certain town is going to be dependent upon this, because getting these seals are very nice. Why? Because they allow you on your turn to place them anywhere you want next to a town and score as if there was a grouping of yours there. So in this case, you could score 1 for pink. Normally you would not be able to do that because you don't have a grouping. Well, the seal gives you a grouping. If you go there, you actually would get 2 of yellow. So seals are a race to get them and highly coveted. The people that come there afterwards are going to get a chance to move one of their envoys to an adjacent space. They can maybe then connect again to that spot. I do want to point out that normally you cannot score a town twice if you did something like this, okay? This would not score the blue town again because it's not first contact of that group. There was already an earlier contact. However, if you come at that town with another one of your groups that is separate from the other, you could score the town in that case. You'll go throughout the game, placing your envoys, moving up these tracks, potentially getting a chance to move other discs up the track as one of your bonuses. As I said, placing for another turn, getting these seals. The white tracks have similar bonuses up there. And you're going to be doing all of this while trying to gain these different objectives, okay? These objectives refer to the connecting of towns. So if you're able to connect towns of the same color, you're going to be able to get a bonus. So in this case, yellow is connected to yellow towns, and then they could put their flag on that spot to show that they've scored 2 points. And if you can connect to all of the towns, you'll get this bonus of 10 points, which is huge in a game that 50 points is one of the end game triggers. These are shared objectives. These are solo objectives, so the first one to get them will get the points and nobody else will as well. The game will continue until either one player passes the 50-point marker or one player gets rid of all of their envoys. At the end, you will check to see who's eligible for the victory by maxing out their track. Of those players, whoever has the most points is the winner of Cascadero. Let's head back over and let you know what we think.
So Bitewing Games tends to make really good production, and I think they tend to have a very good eye for making games kind of pop on the table. And this one, this style here by famed illustrator Ian O'Toole, I think that you're going to have a strong opinion on it one way or the other, whether you feel like it looks classy or whether you feel like it looks meh. And I'm curious your thoughts on it.
I think it's a stylistic choice that he went with that isn't, it feels like the Euro games I play all the time. Like stylistically, it's those kind of like muted orange colors. It reminds me of Coimbra, just like the layout of you've got a map and then you've got stuff on the left and you've got tracks on the right. Like coloring wise, I definitely thought like, oh, this looks like a lot of other Euro games I've seen.
Yeah, it does. It certainly is not something you have not seen before if you played Euro games. You've got, a side of the board that is, hexes, or you're going to be placing pieces out. And on the right side, you've got tracks that are interconnected with what you're doing on the hex board. So nothing new there. But I do think that it looks elegant, right? It looks classy. As you mentioned, I think you used that word, Chris. And I do think that the colors of the tracks pop enough that it gives the game a nice look. And when the pieces are out on the board, I also feel like it looks nice, but it's never going to be confused for a highly thematic game in any sense of the word.
Well, to the point where the name actually is kind of Spanish nonsense, right? Cascadero. I looked this up multiple times just to make sure that it's not a real term, right? It's like Caballero, like cowboy or horseman, mixed with cascading benefits. Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea.
Right, no, and I didn't either until I was playing it. I was like, oh, this has a lot of those like cascading benefits. I do this to get this. Huh. Oh, Cascadero. Really quick, one point that Mike makes is the game board does look better progressively as more of your horsemen and your envoys go out there. So.
Well, I was going to say the horsemen, the envoy, the whatever, as you put those out, I know pulling out the game, I thought that my player color related to a specific track. And so that was definitely one of those things that like, everyone has all tracks. It's not like I'm pink, I get the pink track.
But there is one brilliant little thing. Mike, I'll let you speak to that about the player colors.
Yeah, I can't disagree more, honestly. Because look, Knizia is known in some of his best games as having a hook, or maybe one or two hooks that circumvent maybe what you've seen in the past. Or, you're going along teaching the game, you're like, yep, makes sense. Oh, right? There's usually one of those moments. And the O moment, I think, in Cascadero is the idea that the player colors are tied to those tracks because you're not eligible to win the game at all, no matter how high your score is, if you don't max out the track that is your color, right? And so if you want to try to inject some theme with a sledgehammer, every player is a minister that is for a particular type of industry, whether it's mining or economy. And so if you're the pink player, the economy player, you have to max out the economy track. Now, as Wendy said, you also have access to all of the other tracks, including the player colors of the other players, but you have to focus on your track to even be eligible to win the game.
Yeah, and I like that touch because at first I thought, oh, another game that mixes
same colors.
Yeah, mixes player colors with like a generic thing, and it's not generic. I do like that point, and I like that gimmick where on this map, if I'm playing blue really matters to me, right? But I can't let it matter too much to the point where I only move up blue because I'm giving up so many of the other bonuses. Mm-hmm. And that for me is, the game at first is like put out a horseman, put out a horse guy, don't get anything. Your next turn, put out a horse guy, now you start getting stuff. And it feels so obvious and blatant at the beginning of like, got it. If I put next to yellow at the beginning, I won't get yellow, but now from now on, as I grow that thing out, I'll get more stuff. But, like Mike talked about, those Knizia hooks, it starts to kind of reveal itself as you play more than just the first, few turns. You're like, I moved up the track.
Yeah. Well, I do appreciate that it gives you a direction to go to because the board is just open at the beginning. You're like, oh, I could start next to someone else, or I could go off in a corner by myself. I could start next to a city knowing that I'm not going to get that bonus, or I can start on the very edge of the map so that I don't waste any spaces. Like there's a lot of choice at the beginning, and it's like so much information. Where do I start? And so it gives you a little direction of like, how about you try working towards a pink spot, like a pink city, because you need to move up on pink by the end of the game.
Yeah, and actually, one of the things that teaching new players, the one thing I emphasize, when I'm doing the teach, is that you're not scoring from a city. You're scoring when you go into a city. And so a lot of times people, like, if they're just starting and maybe they're the blue player, they think, okay, well, I'm going to start at a blue city. Well, it's probably not the best first placement because you're not going to score that blue city right away. You'd have to come at it with another grouping. And so that was a little thing that people had to kind of get used to, because it kind of, again, circumvents maybe what you're used to in Euro games. And so that was the one thing that I wanted to usually make clear to people, because what I tend to love about Knizia games is that the depth of the gameplay versus the length and difficulty of the rules is always a beautiful ratio. And in this game, literally what you're doing on your turn is placing out a single envoy. That's what you're doing, right? Now, what transpires from that simple one action, usually on Knizia's games, it'll say, you have 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 actions to choose from. Here, you've got one action, put out an envoy, right? But as you progress through the game and you start doing your town scorings, and as you start to move up those tracks, because technically when it says when you score a town, you're really moving up these tracks. Those are going to allow you to do so many other things that open up the game to you, that allow you to get these cascading combos. And Chris, I didn't even know that about the name, but it actually makes me like the title now, where before I was just like, very, okay. If that's what it is, cascading, and it's a made-up thing, I kind of like it. So yeah, that simplicity of rules to depth of gameplay is what I love.
And I think immediately people are going to look at this and say, feels like a roll and write game. Feels like that Ganshun clever, that pretty clever type of thing where, one thing, one little placement, okay, allows me to, move up. And we have not spoken yet about the point that one of my favorite parts about this game is Wendy's connected to this blue city previously. I connect to that city that she's connected to. It was worth 1 step for her, 2 steps for me. Mm-hmm. That feels nice, because what otherwise just kind of feels like, oh, it's a game of just blocking each other. Don't let other people get the good spots, get to them first. All of a sudden now there's this kind of symbiotic, like, yeah, go ahead, I'll let you get over there first, and then I will ride on your coattails and move up twice as high. I really like that. And then its interactions from the map to the tracks is even more rewarding, I think, in that sense.
I think this game has a lot of player interaction that goes along with it, where you do benefit from being around other people, and you benefit from sharing those spaces and sharing those cities. At the same time, you can also get really in each other's way, because you're trying to connect multiple cities. You're trying to meet all these objectives that are across the middle of the board. And some of those are first come, first serve. So you're like, I'm trying to be the first person to do this. I'm trying to be the first person to meet these objectives. And so you're getting in each other's way. And so it's funny that in a lot of ways, this gives me abstract game feels, because I'm putting stuff out and I'm trying to get in your way, and, we're creating these lines. But at the same time, there's so much else going on in the game that it doesn't just feel like an abstract game.
A comparison, I think, and Mac, maybe you can speak to this, is like Through the Desert and Blue Lagoon, 2 other Knizia designs that have the same type of thing. Put pieces on hexes. Those to me feel more like abstract games. And this one kind of, it feels like abstract plus, a little bit of extra bonuses to work towards.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to make the comparison to Through the Desert on the hex board side for sure, because it's path building and you're kind of connecting to areas on the map, and that's an apt comparison. I think I do think that there's more to this game than Through the Desert. You might say Through the Desert is a purer game, and I wouldn't even argue that. But I think that Cascadero is a more dynamic game, in my opinion. I have not played Cascadero as much as I've played Through the Desert, but time will tell if that kind of feeling of dynamism holds up. And if another thing that is, there's another side to the board that can change things up, but we're not even really talking about that right now. Yeah, I think that those comparisons will certainly be there, and they do make sense. You talk about the interaction, Wendy, and I think that, yeah, I agree. It's a very interactive game. And when you're playing a 4-player game, or even a 3-player game for that matter, you're going to get in each other's way. There's no two ways about it. Now, you could be doing that purposely. It can be a mean game if you play it that way, for sure. But it can also happen accidentally, and that is a result of those incentives that you're going for. Those some are shared, where every player can score. If you connect 2 yellow cities, everyone can score those 2 points, I believe it is. But you have those first come, first serve. And from what I believe is the biggest single way to get points in this game is if you connect all 5 of the colored cities, you get a 10-point bonus. That is huge in a game where 50 points triggers end game. That's a fifth of your points you get right there. And by doing that, you've also essentially gotten another 10 points to get that. So 20 of your 50 points can come from that. So you're going to get in each other's way. Everyone wants to connect cities. And so I think that's a really brilliant way of doing that. You're incentivizing people in such a way that they're going to get in each other's way.
That is one thing that I'm surprised that with a 2-player game versus like a 3 or 4-player game, that the map is not decreased, because in a 2-player game, you still get in each other's way, but it's not the same density of stuff by the end of the game.
Absolutely, yeah. And so player count matters definitely for that. But I think that the overall experience, how do I say this cautiously? What you do in the game is still the same. And in that sense, it scales well. It's just kind of the sense of tightness that doesn't.
Do you all mind if we start with scores?
I think we should.
Okay, so I'm going to give this a 7. This is not my typical type of game. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of that abstract stuff going on the board that kind of just explodes my brain. I don't know how to do a lot of that stuff. But I really enjoy the tracks, and I enjoy that I have all the goals to work towards, so it gives me direction and purpose behind just this very open board. And so I feel like that that helps me enjoy the game more, because I'm like, okay, well, there's so many options, I don't know where to go, but at least I know I'm trying to connect the 5 cities, or at least I know I'm trying to get, some different colors here and there, and I'm trying to move up on tracks. And I really, really love the moving up on the tracks and how you kind of reach those points that you have to hop over, so you have to get at least a 2 to get past them. I just think that that's really clever. I love the rewards and the bonuses you get, and you can't move up on everything, so you're picking just a couple of tracks that you really want to excel on. But also there's benefits for doing a little bit of everything. So I like that. I think the tracks is my favorite part. The objectives gives a good focal point. And then the actual abstract part of the game, which I know is the majority of the game, is my least favorite. So this is why this is a 7. It's not this huge high score, but I did enjoy it, and I would come back to this and play it again.
And other games that are similar to Blue Lagoon, you didn't like as much.
A 5 for me. Yeah, I am not interested in Blue Lagoon at all. So this has more going on in it, so I can appreciate it.
Tracks, baby. Mm-hmm. For me, this is an 8. I think that it's a simple teach, especially with Mike's little hack there of you are scoring and moving up tracks as you connect into a city and I think that simple concept teach is going to make this a very smooth, easy playing game. I think that it's very in vogue, and especially over the last several years, to have these games where you do a simple thing that leads to a cascade of multiple benefits. I really like that idea of landing exactly on those seals, and you can spend those seals to make a connection even with just one envoy. And so there's little moments that kind of supersede just the basic rule structure. As you can get 2 up to 3 steps up tracks if you connect where other players have already gone. If they have that meeple, I forget the name of it, theme sitting in that city already. There's just moments that are more exciting than they seem like they should be for a game this simple. Put out one horse guy, right? And so for me, that's a huge boon to this. I like it a lot, and I think it presents itself well. It looks good, especially by the end of the game, and it's easy to read. All those things are speaking well to it, so it's an 8 for me.
The little white meeple is blowing a horn because he's a herald, right? In this deeply thematic game, you're trying to, gain the trust of the people in a land that has been split. And so the herald is calling out and gaining the trust of the people. I'm joking, but yeah, it's a herald. I'm giving this an 8.5. Now, many people will probably take that with a grain of salt, because I've definitely played in to the fun of the, Reiner Knizia, greatest designer of all time, what have you. Yes, he is my favorite designer, but I also think a lot of the games he made are mediocre. I think a lot of the games he made are just straight up bad. This isn't one of them. I think this game is excellent. And in addition to the things that I've talked about that I really like about his best games, very simple. You're doing one thing on your turn, and it still leads to this huge decision space as the game goes on. The other thing that I've enjoyed is that how my experience as a player has progressed as I've played the game more times with different groups of people. It is a game that seems very simple at first glance, at first play, right? You might even have a good first impression of the game when you play it. But as I've played it more, I start to see different little nuances and wrinkles that I hadn't seen in previous plays. Sometimes it's something I notice. Sometimes it's something that another player has done, and I go, oh my gosh, I never even really thought about that. That's really smart. And so I found that the designs of his that have lasted are the ones where you find some of these nuances as you go along. My one little caution is that while it has these nuances, it is a very simple thing that you're doing. And so I wonder, will it hold up to 50, 60 plays, although most people would not try to do that. But, there's some people that have played Through the Desert hundreds of times. Will this hold up to that? I don't know yet. I have played it quite a bit in the short time that I've had it, but I don't know. I know that right now it's excellent. I'm very much excited about teaching it to people, playing it with people. Most people have had a very positive first impression with it. So I think if you wanted more variety, the back of the board could give you that. But I'll be interested to see if this is something that maybe they iterate on. Who knows? He doesn't do as many expansions as people might think. So we'll see. 8.5 for me. Excellent.
Seal of excellence, for sure.
All right, well, there you go. That's our thoughts there on Cascadero. A high of an 8.5 means, Cascadero getting a seal of excellence. I do enjoy it plenty, and I agree with Mike. I agree with everything Mike said. I think this is one that will hold up to a lot of plays. And for me, I'm excited to get it back to the table as well. So
there we go.
There you go. Until next time, folks, thanks for coming out to this review. My name is Chris Yee.
I'm Wendy Yee.
And I'm Mike Delisio.
Cascadero. Whoopah! Cascadero.